In a bare-knuckle fight between Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, and Logan, aka Wolverine. Both are stripped of their signature weapons. No vibranium shield, no adamantium claws. Steve possesses superior strength, incredible speed, and skilled fighting skills, tempered by the Super Soldier Serum. In theory, he has an overwhelming advantage. However, victory is not easy for Steve, because Logan is not a normal human. Despite losing his claws, he still has an indestructible adamantium skeleton and near-instantaneous healing ability. Under the blood-red sunset, New York City was immersed in a rare silence. The skyscrapers rose high, reflecting the orange-yellow light on the glass surface, creating a haunting urban picture. The cold wind blew through the streets, carrying the smell of dust and metal. In a hidden corner of Manhattan, in an abandoned warehouse, two extraordinary people stood facing each other, their eyes cold and wordless. Steve Rogers, the man nicknamed Captain America, stood straight, his toned muscles clearly visible under his dark blue combat suit. His deep blue eyes flashed with determination, but also contained a hint of caution. Without the legendary vibranium shield, he looked like an ancient warrior, relying only on his own strength and will. Opposite him was Logan, also known as Wolverine, with a growling look like a cornered beast. His scraggly beard, razor-sharp eyes, and muscular body exuded indomitability. He lacked adamantium claws, but the metal skeleton inside still made him an indestructible fighting machine. No one knew why they were standing here, ready to engage in a ruthless battle. Perhaps it was a personal challenge, a confrontation to prove who was stronger, or simply fate. There were no spectators, no spotlights, just two warriors and a tense atmosphere. Steve spoke first, his voice calm but as sharp as a blade. "Logan, we don't have to do this." Logan curled his lips, a half smile revealing his indifference. "Steve, you know we both want this. No shields, no claws, just fists and will. Let's see who's the last one standing." There was silence for a moment, except for the sound of the wind whistling through the broken windows. Then, as if by an invisible signal, the two of them charged at each other. The first punch sounded like thunder. Steve's fist, enhanced by the Super Soldier Serum, slammed into Logan's shoulder. The dry ham-on-anvil sound echoed through the warehouse. Logan took a step back, but was unharmed. He smirked, his eyes flashing with amusement. "Not a bad punch, Rogers, but you're going to need more." Logan responded with a lightning-fast hook, aimed straight at Steve's jaw. His adamantium skeleton made his punch feel like a steel bar. Steve tilted his head, avoiding the blow, but the wind from the blow still made his hair flutter. He countered immediately, delivering a series of punches to Logan's chest and stomach. Each blow was precise, powerful, but Logan only backed away slightly, his body seemingly oblivious to the pain. The red mark on Logan's skin appeared and disappeared in an instant, like a drop of water dissolving into sand. Steve frowned, realizing the real challenge. He had fought countless enemies, from mercenaries to aliens, but Logan was a completely different opponent. There was no obvious weakness, no way to defeat him directly. The adamantium skeleton protected Logan like a fortress, and his healing ability was like a never-ending river. The fight dragged on, each minute passing like a century. Steve moved quickly, using speed and technique to dodge Logan's punches, looking for an opening. But every time he attacked, his fists hit an invisible wall. Logan, though slower, had incredible endurance. He didn't need to dodge, didn't need to defend too much. Each of Steve's punches was just a passing breeze, while Logan's counterattacks gradually made Steve feel pain. The sun had set and the warehouse was dark. Only the dim light of distant street lamps filtered through the cracks in the walls. Sweat trickled down Steve's forehead and his breathing became labored. Even with the Super Soldier Serum, he was still human, and humans had limits. Logan's punches, though slow, left a dull ache every time they landed. Steve's arms began to shake slightly, not from fear, but from the wear and tear on his body. Logan, on the other hand, seemed unfazed. The wounds on his body healed quickly, as if time were rewinding. He stood firm, his gaze still cold, unwavering. "You fought well, Rogers," Logan said, his voice low and husky. "But you can't hurt me. Not long enough to make a difference." Steve didn't respond. He took a deep breath, trying to focus. He knew that if this continued, Logan would win. Not because Logan was stronger, but because he couldn't be beaten in conventional ways. Steve needed a plan, a strategy to overcome Logan's healing factor and indestructible skeleton. He backed away, keeping his distance, watching his opponent. Logan didn't rush forward. He stood there like a living statue, waiting. Steve began to move, circling Logan, looking for a weak spot. He thought about attacking the head, but Logan's skull was an adamantium fortress. Attacking the body was useless, as the healing factor would erase any damage. There was only one way: cut off the oxygen to Logan's brain. Steve lunged forward, not to punch, but to lock Logan. He used all his strength, wrapping Logan's neck in a classic chokehold. Logan growled, trying to struggle, but Steve tightened his grip, his muscles as taut as steel cables. "Go to sleep, Logan," Steve whispered, his voice full of determination. Logan fought back fiercely, throwing punches at Steve's ribs. Each blow felt like a sledgehammer, making Steve grit his teeth in pain, but he didn't let go. He knew this was his only chance. If Logan fell unconscious, Steve could find a way to end the fight. Time passed, each second an eternity. Logan grew weaker, his breathing ragged. His eyes still flashed with indomitability, but his body couldn't fight the lack of oxygen. Finally, Logan collapsed, his heavy body collapsing onto the cold concrete. Steve gasped, letting go of Logan. He stood there looking down at his opponent, his heart pounding. But the fight wasn't over. Logan could wake up at any moment, and Steve knew he couldn't just stop here. He needed a decisive blow, a way to make sure Logan couldn't continue fighting. He looked around, looking for anything that could help. The warehouse was littered with metal shards, but nothing strong enough to pierce the adamantium. Steve had a crazy idea. Separate Logan's skull from his body. With his strength, he could do it. But would the adamantium skeleton allow it? Steve wasn't sure, but he had to try. Steve Rogers knelt on one knee on the cold concrete, his strong hands gripping Logan's head. Sweat dripped down his forehead, dripping onto the floor, creating streaks that glistened in the dim light coming from the cracks in the warehouse walls. His deep blue eyes flashed with determination and hesitation. He knew he was faced with a grim choice: end the fight with a brutal act, or find another way. Logan's adamantium skeleton was a challenge to his strength, and his opponent's healing factor made any attempt seem futile. Logan lay still, breathing weakly, his eyes closed, but Steve knew full well that this unconsciousness was only temporary. Logan's healing factor could return him to the fight in minutes, even seconds. Steve clenched his fists, feeling the power of the Super Soldier Serum coursing through his muscles. He could do it, sever Logan's head from his body, an act that even his adamantium skeleton couldn't prevent, if he really put his mind to it. But could he live with that decision? Could Captain America, the symbol of justice, cross his own moral boundaries? The cold wind blew, carrying a whistling sound like the whisper of fate. Steve took a deep breath, trying to clear his thoughts. He stood up, letting Logan go, letting his opponent's unconscious body lie still on the floor. He couldn't do it, not because he didn't have the strength, but because he didn't want to be a killer. "There has to be another way," he whispered, his deep voice echoing in the silence. Suddenly, a small sound came from Logan, a soft groan. Steve turned, his body tensing, ready to face another attack. Logan's eyes slowly opened, the light flashing in the darkness like the eyes of a predator. "You're still soft, Rogers," Logan growled, his voice weak but defiant. He pushed himself up, his body shaking with the effort. Logan's wounds had healed, leaving only dried bloodstains on his shirt. Steve stepped back, keeping his distance, his eyes never leaving his opponent. "I don't want to kill you, Logan, but I won't let you win." Logan's lips curled into a half smile, revealing his familiar indifference. "You don't understand, do you? I don't fight to win, I fight to survive." The light from distant street lamps filtered through the cracks, illuminating the faces of the two combatants in contrasting shades of light and dark. The warehouse now resembled an ancient arena where will and strength alone determined who survived. Steve stood tall, breathing steadily, but his body was beginning to feel tired. Each of Logan's punches, though not causing permanent damage, left a dull ache, like tiny cracks in a solid wall. Logan, on the other hand, seemed unaffected. His adamantium skeleton held him steady, and his healing factor made each wound fleeting. He stood up, shaking his neck slightly, letting out a dry crack. "You put up a good fight, Rogers, but you can't beat the indestructible." Steve didn't reply. He watched Logan, searching for a new strategy. He knew his strength and speed were superior, but that wasn't enough. Logan was not just an opponent, but the embodiment of indomitability. To win, Steve needed to do something he had never done before: push himself beyond his limits. He charged forward, not with punches, but with a clear plan. Instead of attacking head-on, Steve used his speed, moving around Logan like a whirlwind. He aimed for relative weaknesses, knees, wrists, places that even adamantium couldn't fully protect. Each of Steve's blows was quick, precise, forcing Logan to constantly adjust his stance to defend. Logan roared, throwing a powerful punch, but Steve dodged, letting the blow graze his shoulder. He returned the blow with a kick to Logan's knee, which made him pause for a moment. "You're fast," Logan muttered, but his voice couldn't hide the annoyance. Steve didn't stop. He kept moving, attacking from all directions, not giving Logan a chance to counterattack. But Logan was not to be outdone. He began to adapt, to anticipate Steve's movements. A sudden punch from Logan caught Steve in the shoulder, sending him back, feeling the pain spread. "You can't run forever, Rogers," Logan said, his voice as deep as an animal's roar. "Sooner or later you'll get tired, and I won't." As time passed, the warehouse space became stifling. The smell of blood and sweat mixed together, creating a heavy atmosphere. Steve felt his heart beat faster. His breathing became more rapid. He knew that he could not maintain this pace forever. Logan, with his healing ability, could fight for hours, even days, without losing strength. But Steve had no intention of giving up. He stopped, standing opposite Logan, his eyes determined. "Logan, I don't fight for fame or to prove anything. I fight because I believe I can make a difference." Logan frowned, his eyes slightly surprised. "Difference? This is not your battlefield, Rogers. This is a war of survivors." Steve shook his head. "No, this is a war of wills, and I will not let you defeat me." Without waiting for Logan to answer, Steve charged forward. But this time, he did not attack head-on. Instead, he used his surroundings. He leaped onto a concrete pillar, gained momentum, and delivered a spinning kick to Logan's chest. The blow was so hard that Logan was sent flying back, hitting a pile of metal crates with a deafening clang. Steve didn't stop. He picked up a rusty iron bar from the floor, not to attack but for leverage. He wrapped the bar around Logan's neck, pulling hard, trying to lock him in place. Logan struggled, but Steve held on, squeezing harder. "Go to sleep, Logan," he repeated, his voice full of determination. Logan roared, trying to break free, but the lack of oxygen began to weaken him. Logan's arms flailing, but each blow was weaker. Finally, he collapsed again, his heavy body collapsing. The sky outside the warehouse had turned pitch black, the stars twinkling like emotionless eyes staring down at him. Steve stood there, panting, watching Logan lie motionless on the floor. He knew this was not a real victory. Logan would wake, and the fight could continue. But in this moment, Steve had proven himself not just a warrior, but a man willing to push his limits.